Welcome back to Talk Today. We'll have the papers in just a moment, but here's what else is coming up in the programme.
OK, stab vests and body cams for teachers, unbelievably. According to tonight, we'll speak to one headmaster who says more discipline is needed to keep students in check. And after 9 o'clock, leading member of the New Conservatives, one of those fractured groups, Miriam Cates, joins us live from conference in Manchester to explain what her group are promising voters ahead of the next election. Let's take a quick look at some of the morning's front pages. The Times leading with the PM's plans to scrap the northern leg of HS2, although he's now told the BBC he won't be forced into a premature decision on the matter. What does premature mean? We're all waiting. Rishi. The Express focusing on what they call Rishi's path to victory, announcing what's best for Britain, and unforgivable, absolutely, declare the Mirror as they speak to the mother of Bradley Lowry after football yobs made fun of the 6-year-old Sunderland mascot who tragically died in 2017.
An absolutely tragic story, and I'm so glad that he's been caught, arrested and charged.
Listen, there's one thing that I love about society. Quite rightly, that piece of will never live that down.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
In a million years.
Well, thank you for joining us again, Emma and Hugo. I believe we're going to start with Hugo, front page of the Times.
Your newspaper, Hugo.
My own fine newspaper,
yes.
Which has, I think, a sort of horrifying story on the front page. What this is, there is a plan announced by Chris Philp, the Crime and Policing Minister at the Conservative Party conference, to use photographs from the passport database to match them up with CCTV and facial recognition software so that the police can identify shoplifters. Now, I sort of think that's extremely dystopian. It's extremely sort of, sort of horrible sci-fi film. I don't think that's why we have passports, to put our photos on a database so we can be identified by the police should we shoplift.
The nanny state.
But also, I think what's particularly weird about it's weird that this comes from the Conservatives. They're supposed to be the Freedom Party. And this is an extremely authoritarian move. I think it's sinister.
But it's like the tough on crime party as well, even though, for me, if I... Not that I'm suggesting you go out and do this, but if you were to shoplift, surely you just wear a COVID mask or a balaclava and you would just cover your identity.
Could I make it really simple? Let's just forget party allegiance here or whatever. Any view, right? Just get more police on the street so that if you do go shoplifting, you get nicked, Emma Wolf. Isn't that right?
I have lots of questions about this. Are the crims going to have passports necessarily? Is the CCTV blurry images that police anyway don't follow up, are they going to be identifiable from our passport photo for most of us, which is about 10 years old?
That's a very good point.
Police don't actually follow up the majority of shoplifting crimes anyway. I just think this is unworkable. This is such a kind of conference announcement that has not been thought through. It's back of a fag packet, frankly.
It's just another waste of money. Well, potentially a waste of time. It's like Gillian Keegan yesterday saying, "Oh, we're gonna ban phones."
Well,
quite right too. Concentrate on lessons.
But they're already
absolutely right. But it's been announced many, many times, and it hasn't happened. All schools have different policies. Most of them do ask you to hand your phones in.
Isn't it ironic, as we followed the news this morning on a serious note, that there seem to be, as Emma Wolf described, these sort of ridiculous sort of announcements at conference that you could put on the back of a fag packet, and yet the entire country doesn't give a damn. They're waiting for Rishi Sunak to say whether HS2 is going to be abandoned or not, and all he said earlier with the BBC is, I haven't made a decision yet. The people would want me to take your time. No, Rishi Sunak, they don't want you to take your time, they want you to get on with it and show some leadership, man. Isn't that right, Hugo?
Yes, I mean, these are pretendy policies that they might or might not put in a manifesto. But again, sorry, just to come back to the point here, this is the party that is so hostile to ID cards that we've never had.
Oh, he's arrived. Hugo, I don't want to interrupt you. This is hugely exciting news. Rishi Sunak, in his ill-fitting trousers, has arrived at conference. Do you know what would be amazing? If Liz Truss came down the other corridor, that would be brilliant television.
Some kind of duel.
I'm not quite sure how exciting it is to see Rishi Sunak.
They could fight with those giant cotton buds from Gladiators.
At the end of a corridor, and you can't see him anyway.
No, he's not blessed with much height, is our Rishi, and there's several
Don't be
gentlemen.
heightist.
I can be heightist if I like.
That's only because you're 8'7".
No, but there he is. He's at conference.
Where?
He's walking around. There he is, right at the far side.
Oh, on the floor, that thing on the floor.
He's that little
He's
head
that
next to the
tiny
woman in
little
red.
dot in the distance. But there he is, our Prime Minister, and here's a man with a beard walking
that's
towards
not Rishi
the camera,
Sunak.
looking a little bit lost. No, that's Rishi at the far right.
I think one of the
Shock
most interesting things that was said today as well, both, is that this quite potentially could be Rishi Sunak's only conference speech, Hugo.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, as leader, certainly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he'll speak... I reckon he'll speak surprisingly well. I think, because the expectations are low. Sometimes they really dive bomb their conference speeches. You remember Theresa May's when she forgot all her words. You know, I don't think it'll be that bad. He's got a good team who write speeches and all that kind of stuff. But the mood is going to be tetchy. No one's that keen on him. And the whole thing that you've got to do in a conference speech is really establish who you are, what you mean, what your vision is. He hasn't got one.
All in the delivery, though. And actually, I'll talk about Sunday again. When he did the media rounds, he absolutely bombed it, in my opinion, because...
He's tetchy.
I say this as Jeremy Kyle's about to interrupt me. He could not understand when an interviewer was trying to ask him a question. He had to get to the end of every sentence, which is why he's better at speeches than he is on political rounds, media rounds. You can speak now, Jeremy.
Good. Let's move on to the Times. Again, tighter...
Someone smaller than Rishi. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
He stood next to someone smaller than him.
Good Lord. Breaking news on Talk Today. Rishi Sunak shakes the hand of a lady who's half his size.
Who's sitting down.
Who's sitting down.
I have to say, actually, one thing, just going back to it quickly. I think you said, Hugo, and you touched upon this, Emma, that this is tetchy, right?
Yes.
The reason, I didn't get a chance to say this in the last 10 minutes, the reason that Liz Truss is able to fly around the place, right, is because the grassroots Tory party, and this will make you smile, I don't care what anybody tells me, I'll argue till I'm dropping dead, they will never forgive him for what he did to Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson was the darling of the Tory party in terms of the grassroots. And actually, conference is supposed to be, this is where the leader goes and speaks. I think he's going to get... I genuinely don't think it'll go down well at all. But anyway, back to you, Hugo. Tighter migrant rules on way after naivety of Johnson years.
Well, this is another mad conference announcement that may or may not be true. Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, is saying what they're going to do is they're going to crack down on immigration because it turns out that in the past they were too loose on immigration. Bear in mind, this is, 6 years after Brexit, after we took back control, mainly on the basis, at the time, of cracking down on immigration. Oh, look, didn't work. Far more people are coming into the country than were coming in then. The immigration figures this year were, 600,000? Over 600,000?
Yeah.
The idea that the problem was freedom of movement with the EU was just nonsense. And so now they're going to introduce supposedly introduce new rules to crack down. I mean, it's just a sort of failing government, failing in a new direction, isn't it?
But what's he suggesting with the naive decisions made by Boris Johnson?
They are to do with visas for students and the partners of students, and just the extent to which we controlled.
Although Robert Jenrick was part of Boris Johnson's government. Interesting, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
It feels to me, Emma, like... I don't know how to put this. It feels like the end of term, doesn't it? It feels like, it just feels like
anything goes.
Just like everybody's going to have a go, everybody's going to say their bit, and then I'm going to leave my school top on top of the rugby pitch or throw it at the headmaster's house and disappear.
And
never
yesterday,
come back.
Grant Shapps made some throwaway comment about sending British troops into Ukraine, which sort of, inflamed Putin quite significantly.
Yeah.
You can't just chuck this stuff in because it's conference and you need something to say.
It feels like silly season.
It really does feel a bit like back of fag.
And interestingly,
any old thing goes.
On Talk Today, we try and get all views. Nobody from the Labour Party. It's very interesting. Labour preference. We're not talking this week. I suspect that's actually quite a good tactic. Just let it all just come to bits.
Well, that's a kind of gentleman's agreement, isn't it? If they don't talk during the Tory party conference week, then, the Tories won't speak during Labour week, which will be next.
Do you know what I want
Monday.
more than anything in the world?
What?
Our Ange on this show.
I know you do.
Angela Rayner.
Have Angela Rayner sat right here in this studio. You like her?
I think she's grand.
He is a fan. Right, so we're going to move on to the Sun now. Emma.
Yeah.
Strictly head judge Shirley Bassey. Shirley Bassey. Shirley Ballas. This is a very serious story. She says that death threats from trolls have left her scared to leave her home.
Yeah, so she has talked about this in the past. She says that this is the Strictly head judge, Shirley Ballas, talking about how the vicious trolling that she gets, the really quite threatening, frightening trolling that she gets online, people saying, she says, I've had people draw coffins with me in it, with somebody with a spade that says die, threats to her family. She says she's very frightened to leave the house, to go out in public. She's considered her position, whether or not she actually wants to carry on as judge. She's been head judge for about 6 years. Look, this is part of being a high-profile person on television, but of course it's much worse for being a woman, I think. Right. I think she's getting a lot. She's talked about this, about, the very, very personal nature of these attacks. Yeah. And the toll that it's had, this is for an ITV documentary, but the toll that it's had on her mental health as well, and how isolated she feels and how sort of trapped.
Do you know, we've talked about this privately. half of me goes, if you put yourself out there, if you're on social media in the public eye, you have to run with the punches. I think the tech firms, some of it is, it's like this appalling story on the front of the Mirror that we touched about, Unforgivable, the football yob that held up the photograph of that sweet kid, Bradley Lowry, who died of cancer in 2017. People, cowards, bullies.
Yep.
Hide behind
always
social
anonymous
media. And you want to go,
always
I don't
online,
care, but it does
anonymous.
get to you.
Of course it does,
get to you.
because when somebody's anonymous, and I've spoken about this to you before, and I've spoken about it publicly, I had an anonymous stalker for over 2 years, and because he was anonymous, he became everybody. And when the police finally arrested him, they would not give me his identity.
Terrible.
So he became every person at work or somebody at the bus stop, or if I got into a taxi. They would not even confirm if this person was an ex-partner of mine. So, and that is what is absolutely frightening about it. And it's no wonder that somebody like Shirley feels like she can't therefore leave the house.
And that's what she's saying. When she leaves the house, when she goes out in public, she's looking at people, wondering whether the people in person are the trolls who have made these terrible threats to kill her.
These are death threats over being a judge on Strictly. How mad are people?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not politics.
No.
You know, this is it's not something.
It's a dancing
huge.
competition.
And as Jeremy says, you know, how liable the tech companies for this? Why are people getting so cross about
Completely
nothing?
agree.
It's because their fury is accelerated, is monetized, is rendered viral. It's a whole structural thing about how we communicate now that ends up with someone, a Strictly judge, getting death threats. It's bonkers.
Can I just say it at 8:33? You know I have many children. This is from Alice, who's 19, at university. Tuning in, JK, walking to my 9 a.m. lecture. Please don't bore me, I beg.
Well, don't be
Thanks,
boring.
Al.
then.
Doing my best.
19-year-old.
All right, we'll talk about the weather, because most of you students don't do anything but lie in the sun and get drunk every day. What's this story in the Telegraph, Emma?
This is a lovely story, I think. We're going to have a couple of warm... We're going to have a warm weekend ahead. It's going to
They'll all moan
hit
it's
26,
too hot, won't they? They'll all
26 or 27 degrees if we get to next weekend. But, you know, September was the hottest on record. We had the hottest day of the year in September, 33 degrees. And guess what? Scientists are saying this is substantially influenced by climate change.
Have we lost our minds? It's going to be the hottest summer on record because the world is warming up horrendously, because the Antarctic is melting in the winter. This isn't a good news story. This is awful.
No, this is terrible. To think that it's 26
like
degrees.
it warm.
No, but it's 30.
Sorry, it was a light-hearted comment about having a sunny day, but I mustn't do it.
No sunny days for you.
No,
I
Just enjoy the weather.
A sunny day,
Yes,
because it
and
was raining this morning.
Of course, and I understand that. However, middle of October, or the beginning of October, 26 degrees. It's 13 degrees higher than it normally would be at this time of year.
Good.
It just doesn't...
You're right.
Well, it feels
We're
like
going to hell in a handcart.
The seasons have completely changed. It's concerning.
It's like we're on
Go
that
live
show.
in Australia,
It's like we're on that
everything's
show
upside
in
down.
Don't Look Up, pointing at the comet. You know, this is awful. This is, I mean, you've got it's the hottest the world has ever been. And if the way we relate to that is by saying, oh well, at least we can have a barbecue. Come on.
You couldn't even speak earlier because you were too hot in the studio. We've got aircon.
Do you know, all you've done this morning is drop me in it. That's because I was sweating because the heating was on. But just have a nice weekend. Don't get on your green agenda rubbishy bikes and start moaning about all this.
At least it's a bike. At least it's a bike.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a joke as well. By the way, I stayed in town last night. I've got to tell you to the show. Boris bikes thrown everywhere. There's people don't
All
even...
over the pavement.
They're just throwing them around the place with the
I'm
lights
the only
on.
one here who's cycling. The rest of you are probably all gas guzzling, aren't you?
Are you guys guzzling?
I e-bike.
No, I walk to work.
You
No,
what?
My
e-bike.
bike.
What does that mean?
It's an electric bike.
A bike.
That's a con, that is.
It's a bike for
Hugo.
lazy people.
That's not
You
biking.
know
That's
those
not
people that go,
cycling.
I'm fit, and then they go up a hill without moving their legs.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Some of us are working out. Some of us are cycling.
And some of us have got a chauffeur. Right, Hugo.
And some of you are pregnant. Anyway, thank you both.
Hugo and Emma, thank you so much for joining us for the papers today.
Now